Good evening, I'm Ces Oreña-Drilon.
I'm Pauline Verzosa.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
The big stories tonight. Malacanang is adamant. The 2026 national budget is by far the cleanest in recent years. But critics, even the president's sister, believe this year's spending bill could just be the sneakiest, with questionable items still in it.
And PHIVOLCS raises alert level 3 over Mayon as rockfall events and other activities there heighten. State volcanologists are warning of possible lava flow and lahar if the high level of unrest persists and the rains come.
And Davao City Congressman Paulo Duterte has filed a memorandum with the Supreme Court contesting his father's continued detention by the International Criminal Court.
May karapatan po sila na dumulog sa Korte Suprema at tanungin kung unconstitutional ang parte na to ng 2026 national budget. So, tignan naman po natin, of course, kapag po sila nagpahal ng petition, sasagot naman po ang administrasyon.
Pag malalaki ang tipak, mahirap isilid, parang pork barrel. Kaya ang ginagawa, ginigiling. Wow! Farm to Market Road. Nung dati, 16 billion. Eto na, 33 billion. 17 billion ang nadagdag. Nako ha!
Para sa magsasaka natin to, again, ito isa sa mga pinakamahabang pinagdebatihan nung BICAM. Almost 3 hours kami nagdebate dito para makita at marinig ng taong bayan yung logic at yung rational. Ba't ang makikinabang dito, farmers and fisher folks?
Malacanang believes the 2026 national budget can withstand any legal scrutiny. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro says President Bongbong Marcos himself expressed confidence in the budget, maintaining that it is the cleanest to date. Castro was responding to questions about Caloocan Congressman Egay Erice's plan to question the constitutionality of the national budget before the Supreme Court. Erice says the presence of unprogrammed appropriations in the budget is illegal.
May karapatan po sila na dumulog sa Korte Suprema at tanungin kung unconstitutional ang parte na to ng 2026 national budget. So, tignan naman po natin, of course, kapag po sila nagpahal ng petition, sasagot naman po ang administrasyon at tignan na naman po natin kung ano magiging resulta at magiging desisyon ng Korte Suprema.
Meanwhile, the Department of Education said it will use its record budget for 2026 to crack down on the discrepancies in the agency. Among them is the so-called ghost students recently flagged by the Commission on Audit. Audit records in 2025 revealed alleged bogus beneficiaries of the senior high school voucher program from 2022 to 2024 or during the term of resigned DepEd Secretary Vice President Sara Duterte. Education Secretary Sonny Angara said his agency is already addressing this issue with tightened verification measures. Among these are validating learner enrollment and stronger safeguards to prevent data manipulation. Angara likewise clarified government's classroom construction target of over 24,000 in 2026, even as budget for it is in this year's spending bill. He explained classroom projects usually take at least 2 years to finish since fund releases come late in the fiscal year.
Kaya pinago natin yung sistema. Dati binabayaran ka agad, ina-advance yung bayad. Ngayon, tinitingnan talaga yung resulta at kung naka-enroll. Tapos yung learner number at nag-institute tayo ng mga safeguards both at the school level and at the DepEd level. So, binabangga namin yung mga database natin na dati hindi ginagawa.
Senator Amy Marcos again likened the 2026 spending fund to pork giniling, where the budget has been ground and chopped so that so-called porky allocations will not be too obvious. Senator Marcos maintained that the major cuts to critical foreign assistance projects of the Transportation and Public Works Departments were not accidental, as these funds were realigned to more favored allocations. The presidential sister continued to question expanded allocations for farm-to-market roads and social assistance programs such as AIX and TUPAD over critical transportation, infrastructure, and health projects, lamenting its effect on the public. Senator Marcos also reacted to Senate President Tito Soto's remark that the 2026 budget is by far the cleanest. She said this year's budget is the sneakiest as questionable allocations were disguised through fragmentation and redistribution.
Siguro tinawag na pork ang pork barrel dahil madalas talaga namang binababoy lang ng ilang mambabatas ang pondo natin. Pag malalaki ang tipak, mahirap isilid, parang pork barrel. Kaya ang ginagawa, hinigiling.
Para di halata?
Para mas madaling sibain.
Senate Committee on Finance Chairman Win Gatchalian responded to Senator Imy's claims on the 2026 budget, saying that safeguards ensure that it is corruption-free. Gatchalian also said that big-ticket projects will continue, as he explained why farm-to-market road projects needed additional funding.
Para sa magsasaka natin to. Again, ito isa sa mga pinakamahabang pinagdebatihan nung BICAM. Almost 3 hours kami nagdebate dito. Para makita at marinig ng taong bayan yung logic at yung rational. Ba't ang makikinabang dito, farmers and fisher folks?
Let's bring in Senate Finance Committee Chairman Win Gatchalian, who played a major role in the crafting of this year's national budget. Welcome back to the Big Story, Senator Gatchalian.
Thank you, Ces, Shawn, and Pinky. Pauline.
Senator Win, any concerns about the items vetoed by President Marcos?
Yes, actually, I have. But before I answer that, let me just explain the items under the unprogrammed allocation. The unprogrammed appropriation cannot be taken as a whole because it has a lot of line items. In fact, in the National Expenditure Program, there are 11 line items. The most controversial there will be the SAGIP lump sum funds. Because in the past, the SAGIP lump sum funds have been used to fund flood control projects. I'll give you a very specific example. In 2024, the SAGIP lump sum fund funded 80 billion worth of flood control projects. That lump sum fund, we took it out. That's why if you see the Senate version of the GAB, it doesn't have the SAGIP lump sum funds anymore. So I have to say that because that's the most controversial.
Okay.
The other vetoed items, 9 vetoed items, 7 of which are in the National Expenditure Program. Ibig sabihin, it was originally part of the executive's budget. And the 2 were added during the budget process. So all of those were actually coordinated and included in the original proposal of the executive.
So what, in that case, why did the president veto it? It seems incongruous.
Well, the 3, just to answer you, Cess, no, out of the 9 that were vetoed, I'm concerned with the 3, no, and this is the RACE program, the CARS program, and the GOP counterpart for foreign assisted project. The RACE and the CARS program, these are arrears that we have to pay to Toyota and to Mitsubishi because in the past we enticed them to come to the Philippines to set up shop in exchange for tax breaks, and we haven't paid those tax breaks. That's why we included in the unprogrammed allocations 4.2 billion to pay all of those arrears. The other concern is the GOP counterpart to foreign assisted projects because the way foreign assisted projects work, you have the loan and you have the GOP counterpart. So we need to put up those GOP counterparts in order to fulfill our part of the project.
Right. Why was there no discussion on why it had to be part of unprogrammed funds and not included within the budget itself?
Well, one of the reasons why unprogrammed funds are used is the timing. Normally, unprogrammed funds come around second quarter. The bulk will come around third and fourth quarter. So if you don't need the funds during the first quarter, it's better to put it in the unprogrammed so that you can conserve your cash in the first quarter. So it's a cash management method.
Right.
Because if you don't need the cash during the first quarter, why put it in the program fund? Sayang. No, you can use that funds for other requirements that need cash requirements during the first quarter. So it's really a cash management strategy.
It may be that, but Congressman Erice has pointed out that the Supreme Court, in fact, in its decision on the PhilHealth matter, pointed that out. Was there any discussion in the BICAM about the potential unconstitutionality of it?
Well, says the unprogrammed appropriations have been there time immemorial.
Yeah, true.
And I know there is a pending case right now. I understand there's a pending case right now lodged in the Supreme Court against the unprogrammed appropriation. So until that is not yet resolved, there's no legal prohibition to use unprogrammed appropriation. So, well, if the Supreme Court, if someone will file a case or the Supreme Court will resolve that existing case, then at least we will be guided on how to move forward.
But that's a thing, Senator. Like you mentioned, the race program that was vetoed and the CARS program that was vetoed. And you said in your press con earlier, this parang ano siya eh, it gives us a bad reputation to investors, right? And because unprogrammed appropriations have a really bad reputation right now, as to what said, Congressman Erice last night told us, bakit hindi na lang daw i-supplemental budget? Bakit kailangan
As you all
pa
know, whenever you go to Congress, it takes time. If you do a supplemental budget, you have to file a bill in the lower house, in the upper house. You have to do the first, the second, the third reading. So by the time, if you are in dire need of an allocation or appropriation, the minimum that it will take probably 3 to 6 months to get that supplemental appropriation. And that's one logic why unprogrammed allocations or a program appropriations came about, because of the efficiency for unprogrammed appropriations. So this unprogrammed appropriation goes through Congress. So in other words, it gets scrutinized by the lower house, it gets scrutinized by the upper house, and we can scrutinize these projects for as long as it takes. So in other words, if there are items that can be abused, we can remove it. Hence, we removed the Sagip lump sum allocation. It's the Senate that removed it because we saw that in the past it has been abused by channeling funds to questionable projects like flood control projects.
So in order to fund an unprogrammed appropriation, it will also go through scrutiny of both houses of Congress.
Yes, correct. It's not automatic, but whenever the executive proposes unprogrammed allocations in the National Expenditure Program, it will get approved. I'll give you a very specific example. The original line items in the unprogrammed funds are 11 line items. The Senate reduced it to 7. And we removed the Sagip allocation or the Sagip lump sum. So in other words, we can actually eliminate it to 0. But because of the sheer size of the unprogrammed, we're talking about 243 billion. If we move that to program allocations, we need to remove 243 billion in the program allocations. Saan natin kukunin yun? No? So it cannot be done during the legislative budget process. It has to be done earlier on so that the executive can prioritize which projects and programs to remove and which projects and programs to include in the NEP.
Well, Senator, going back to your concerns on the items that President Marcos vetoed, including the CARS program, is there still any legal pathway for our government to honor these obligations despite the veto, given that the biggest implication of that is our credibility as a country in honoring these commitments?
That's a very good question. In fact, the BOI texted me yesterday when they found out that it was vetoed. Because if you listen to the budget hearings of the DTI, and you will hear it there from no less than the Secretary and the BOI pleading that let's pay the investors, let's pay Toyota and Mitsubishi because nakakaya, una. Pangalawa, it's our reputation on the line. How can we attract investors to set up shop, to set up a factory here if we cannot honor our commitments? So it was them who pleaded. That's why we included it at least in the unprogrammed, because it's a non-cash allocation. So to answer your question straight, there are other ways. No? One, the president can use other funds to pay those arrears. For example, the contingency fund. The other one is to come up with a creative accounting mechanism so that the BIR will record its payment and it will free up Toyota and Mitsubishi from paying these arrears.
Okay. Well,
And that's not skirting
It's creativity.
accounting creativity. Okay, let's go to, Senator Amy was part of the BICAM, and then now she released this video about mga giniling-giniling. What's your response to her
Well, that's
video?
her opinion, and even though she's part of the BICAM, she's a vice chairman of the finance committee. She handles other agencies, but that's her opinion, and we respect that. But as far as the committee is concerned, we debated this very long. In fact, originally we only scheduled 3 days for the open BICAM, but it took us 6 days, including the signing. So it was a very debated, very
Vigorously
heavily debated
debated.
process. In fact, we finished 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning discussing all of these things. So it was not sneaky. No, nothing happened.
But how transparent
It
was
was
it?
open to everyone.
Because some of your discussions were, in small groups, no longer in the live stream.
But a lot of this discussion, just like in the committees, just like in plenary, there are times that we need to talk about things so that we will have cooler heads. If we continue to magbabangayan kami all throughout the night, it will never end. So we need to calm down a little bit, talk with cooler heads, and then revive again the discussions. But all of those discussions were live and shown to the public. So walang sneaky na nangyari.
well, now, Senator, the budget is done, but that's just one part of it. Of course, corruption can still come out in the implementation of the
Correct.
GAA, right? Have you
Yeah.
guys? I know that's kind of not in your purview, but
Yeah.
in terms of what Congress can do to put in safeguards, what have you guys done differently this time around?
That's a very good question. We need to also distinguish where the budget process ends and the implementation starts. Now, the budget process after the signing is done. No? So we already transmitted to the executive the budget, and the president signed it yesterday. So the next 12 months will be the implementation, and then Congress, both the House and the Senate. Part of its inherent powers is to conduct oversight. So we plan to convene for the first time actually, the Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on Public Expenditures, and we will monitor big ticket items. We will monitor how items are being spent, how items are not spent, no? Because another big sakit ng gobyerno is underutilization. There's so many items that are not being spent. No, they will request for funds, but they will not implement it. So we will also look at utilization. We will also look at procedure on how these funds are being spent. So the oversight committee will be convened, and we will use that as a mechanism to monitor the implementation of the budget.
And will you let CSOs and budget watchdogs into this process with the oversight function of Congress? Because a lot of them, as early as now, are saying they're soft pork, hard pork, and all of that.
Well, let me just say that in this bill, Senator Lacson also introduced what we call now the anti-EPAL provision, where politicians are barred from joining distribution of assistance and aid. That prohibition actually only happens during election, but because of this general provision, now it will happen every single day. So that's another safeguard that important assistance or important aids will not be politicized.
But Senator, speaking of that anti-EPL provision, some budget watchdogs are saying it still lacks teeth. It's insufficient in the sense that there are no clear penalties. Ano ba yung magiging penalty kung sakaling ang makita na
Pauline,
may...
this is a budget bill. It's not an anti-EPAL bill. No? So we cannot put penal provision in a budget bill, or else lahat ng mga provisions yun magkakaroon ng penal provision. No? So the penal provision exists in other laws. That's why this anti-EPAL bill will ride on other laws. But since it's included in the appropriation law, what will happen now is, before all of these amounts will be appropriated, the anti-EPAL provision should be considered. But when there is a violation, another law will be triggered.
But when it comes to the mechanisms of this anti-EPAL provision, Senator, so it will be up to the agencies and the departments to craft them, to implement them?
Correct. They have to come up with the guidelines. It's also in the general provisions that they're mandated to come up with the guidelines. So it's not empty, it's not empty air. They have to come up with concrete guidelines on how to implement the general provision. That's also part of our oversight to make sure that that provision gets operated.
But honestly, Senator, how pork-free is this law? The budget?
It's pork-free.
Super
It's pork-free
pork-free?
because-
Walang soft pork?
It's pork-free because it's the executive who will now implement it. It's not the legislative branch who will implement it. It's the executive who will implement it. And with the guidelines that will come out, then it will be a fairer, efficient, and clearer process on availing all of these projects, activities, and programs of the government.
Senator, watchdogs are flagging one program, though, and that's the Convergence and Special Support Programs, or the CSSP under DPWH. They say it's still prone to flexibility, and insertions and reallocations can happen there. Maybe you'd like to clarify that, Senator?
That's not true. All the projects in DPWH are line item with station numbers and coordinates. So there's no lump sum in DPWH.
Okay. If we can move on to another topic, mainit na usapan ngayon, Senator, no, yung MOOE or yung break bonus, so-called, of the lower house of congressmen. May ganun din po ba sa upper house?
Wala sa upper house na ganyan.
So
I don't even know kung merong ganyan sa lower house. I don't want to comment on that. That's the concern of the lower house. But in the upper house, walang ganyan.
So your MOOEs are disbursed in a different, kumbaga, timeline, in a different manner from the lower house?
The way we operate is the committee itself. Like kami, sa Committee on Finance, we have a budget, and that includes the MOE. So we use the MOE to buy, diba, pag nag-hearing kami, normally lunch to dinner. So we buy lunch and dinner. We also buy merienda for them. We also use that to, if we need to print materials, we use that MOE.
Or
But
senators?
it's not us personally who can use it for our own personal expenses. It's for the committee expense.
But you do get allowances if you chair a committee. Additional,
The committee,
over and above.
not me. I don't get any allowance. It's a committee that gets an allowance. It's a committee that gets the budget. That's why if you chair two committees, then you get two budgets for that committee.
Which is also, the chair has a free hand in spending that money.
For committee activities, not for personal activities. We have to qualify that. So, for example, the committee will conduct an ocular inspection. Like kami, no? In the oversight, we plan to conduct ocular inspection of irrigation projects. We can use those budgets to buy plane tickets, book a hotel, or pay for food. So those activities.
Okay, and speaking of committees, it's of course your first budget as Finance Committee Chairman. How would you assess what happened? And of course, the timing of it, right? In the middle of this whole scandal and all the pressure on you. If you were to grade yourself, 10 being the perfect score, what would you... the whole thing, learnings?
It's really a lot of stress because there's a time element. I have to explain that unlike other bills that you can have a hearing one to sawa, You can hear a bill 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, doesn't matter. In the finance committee, you have to finish it by end of the year, or else you'll have a reenacted budget, and the reenacted budget will destroy the economy. That's the problem. So we need to make sure that things are pushing forward. And so one of the biggest, ang daming learning process. So many things that we need to adjust. One of the things is timing. Typically, the budget is transmitted to Malacanang around second week of December. This time we transmitted it fourth week of December. That's why we had a 4-day reenacted budget. So that's something that we need. That's something that should not happen anymore. It's too risky to have that.
Did you achieve all that you intended to do when you assumed the position?
Insofar as making it corruption free, and insofar as making it transparent and making it detailed, yes. I'll give you a concrete example. For irrigation projects and farm to market roads, before it was all lump sum. So you'll see a budget worth 30 billion for irrigation, but you don't know where the projects are. That one we painstakingly itemize close to about 30 billion worth of irrigation projects. And these are small projects. We're talking about 5 million, 10 million. And we painstakingly included coordinates and station numbers in those projects. So that's why if you look, if you have time to look at the annexes, you'll see all the projects itemized with coordinates and station numbers. And all of these are uploaded. Don't take my word for it. Visit the transparency portal, the Senate budget transparency portal. Everything is there.
Well, it's actually a complete 180, Senator, coming from the 2025 budget, which a lot of people said it was the most corrupt budget in the country's history, to now having what they call the cleanest budget, at least in recent years. But when it comes to transparency, Senator, the budget last year was historic. The budget process was historic in a sense that it was open for the first time to the public, the BICAM process. But in your opinion, are there still areas for improvement that we can do for the next budget cycles?
A lot pa, Shawn. Like I said, the timing and the calendar, we need to improve. One of the things that we will also conduct in the oversight committee is the budget process itself prior to the NEP. Kasi the NEP is only half of the budget process. Prior to it is also important, meaning how community, civil society, local government units, how people can recommend projects and it will end up in the NEP. That process needs to be looked at also. And there's a process, there are a lot of guidelines. In fact, it's included in the local government code. But is it being followed? And is it efficient? So those are the things that we will look at also. It's a technical matter, but it's also a matter between the legislative and the executive. But nevertheless, it's an important matter.
Senator Win Gatchalian, we thank you for joining us on The Big Story. You had the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee there. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Maraming salamat.
Well, this is The Big Story on One News. And still to come, Mount Mayon is restive again, and FIVOLC says there could be lava flow, even lahar, if the volcano's activities persist and rains pour. We speak to a FIVOLC official about possible scenarios in the coming days. Keep it here on One News.
You're watching The Big Story here on One News. FIVOLC has raised alert level 3 over Mount Mayon after the volcano showed more signs of impending eruption. Video monitoring by FIVOLC earlier in the day showed thick smoke around Mayon and emissions of pyroclastic density current, or Uson, up to 2 kilometers from the crater. In other words, it's an effusive magmatic eruption which coincided with a series of rockfall events and volcanic earthquakes. Since alert level 3 is already raised, residents near Mayon volcano are now compelled to evacuate, especially those within the 6-kilometer radius. That zone covers parts of Legazpi, Ligao, Tabaco, Daraga, Ginobatan, Kamalig, Malilipot, Bakakay, and Santo Domingo. Kamalig, which is closest to Mayon's peak, has started evacuations.
Ang nasa 6 kilometer kasi namin, nasa almost 118 families. I-evacuate natin. Napayagan po namin sila na i-harvest na muna yung mga nila, yung mga vegetables na tanim po nila.
Aside from areas in the immediate vicinity of Mayon, PHIVOLCS is also cautioning nearby provinces like Sorsogon and Masbate of possible ash fall. And if it rains, there's also the possibility of lahar.
Sumunod po sila sa evacuation plan ng LGUs nila. And kapag may ash or may sulfur dioxide, then they have to wear face masks kasi nga that would protect themselves lalo kapag may respiratory problem sila.
Now let's discuss this further with Mariton Bornas, Chief of the Volcano Monitoring and Eruption Prediction Division of PHIVOLCS. Good evening to you and welcome to the Big Story.
Good evening to Montes.
So now that there is alert level 3 up over the areas, please tell us which areas are on alert level 3, rather.
So at alert level 3, the areas within the 6-kilometer radius from the danger zone must be evacuated. We're talking about communities, most specifically or more preponderant on the northern flank of the volcano. And this is mainly by the town of the city of Tabaco, Malilipot, Bakakay, and Ligao. And then we have a few communities in the other areas, like in Kamalig, Daraga, Legazpi City, Santo Domingo. But most of the evacuees will come from Tabaco City.
And is it imminent that the alert level will be raised to 4?
No, technically we already have an eruption because when we have pyroclastic density currents on Mayon volcano, this means that new lava, juvenile lava, which is from a new intrusion in the Mayon edifice, is already coming out. It's not like rockfall, which can be pre-existing lava that's being pushed out and collapsing and rolling and bouncing down the slopes as competent or hard rock, no? Like fragments. Pyroclastic density currents are from very hot and new magma, which actually transforms the magma actually comminutes is the term, or it becomes pulverized into fine ash and rock fragments and volcanic gas, and transports as a flow down the volcano. And this is the most dangerous volcanic hazard in Mayon.
Ms. Mariton, would it be safe to say or to assume, I know volcanoes are unpredictable, but the fact that we are having an effusive eruption, will this mean that, lessen the chances of an explosive eruption? Yung parang one-time, big-time, like what we saw in Mount Pinatubo in 1991.
If you look at the behavior of Mayon volcano and you compare it to the other eruptions in the past, specifically 2023, the pattern is practically the same. We have the dome growth. This is the very sticky or already hardened lava, the mouth of the volcano that's just growing or becoming taller as time goes by. And then we have the increase in rockfall activity, like in 2022, prior to the eruption. And so if you look at that eruption, it's practically the same. So we are expecting more of the effusive.
So Mariton, I suppose the real question is the worst over?
Not really. Mayon, the difference between 2023 and now is that now we have precursory long-term ground deformation, no, that we didn't have in 2023. This means that there is pressurization within the volcano since June 2024, arising from magma that's being intruded from deep within the volcano, which we did not detect in 2023. The 2023 eruption began practically with no anomaly shown by the volcano, but this time there was. So there is always this chance that we can see that magma that's trying to intrude at very great depths suddenly accelerate and produce a more explosive eruption. But looking at the parameters today, currently, we see no sign of that happening. But again, we don't know tomorrow or the next months.
Since it's raining in the area, there is more possibility of lahar flow?
Yes, there could be possible minor and panel confined lahars on the southern sector of the volcano, no? Specifically in the rivers draining the Bonga Gully. And we are talking about the Bayuan Padang drainage systems, the Mabinit Bonga drainage system. Because right now, in the past few months, most of the lahars have occurred on the southwestern flank of the volcano in the town of Ginobatan, which are generated by extreme rainfall, mobilizing older material. We're talking about 50-year-old and even older material on that part of the volcano. So, but now we have new material, fine ash, on the southern slopes, and that could occasion a few minor lahars.
Well, Mariton residents within the 6-kilometer danger zone have been required already to evacuate. Gaano ba ka-critical na sila ay umalis na within that area? And is there also a possibility for lava flow?
Well, definitely, we are expecting this activity to mature into lava flow activity. And I think the only wild card is, will we have lava fountaining as well, which is a mildly explosive, effusive eruption. And if that's the case, there is always a possibility that we can also have minor explosions. So, what was the other question aside from the?
So how critical is it for residents to evacuate already, and even to nearby provinces katulad ng Sorsogon? Are you also warning them already to brace themselves for possible impact?
So right now, it's really important for our barangays and communities within the 6-kilometer PDZ to evacuate, because we don't know what will happen tomorrow or the next week. No? And it's better to be safe from the eruption rather than risk being caught in one and then having to flee to safety. No? As for our the nearby provinces or the surrounding provinces of Albay, there is a possibility that we can experience ash, especially if we have a stronger eruption, minor explosive eruption, or a continuous PDC or rockfall that can, and then we have strong wind. No? So the ash can be blown to nearby provinces like Masbate or Sorsogon. And so it's much better to be prepared with face masks. And of course, the issue really in times like this are yung agricultural land of when crops are ready to be harvested, etc.
Right, Mariton. So I wanted to go back to Ces's question about the lahar flows and which towns. You mentioned southwest. So just to check the southwest towns that will be most affected by possible lahar flows, kasi Pag-asa said that it's going to be a rainy first quarter. Would that be Daraga, Kamalig, and Ginobatan? Which towns would have to keep an eye out for these possible lahar flows?
Okay, so we have perennial lahar problems in Ginobatan, whether we have this eruption or not, during extensive rainfall. But with this eruption, we are expecting additional channels in Legazpi City, particularly the Bonga Mabinit and the Buyuan Padang channels to be affected. And possibly if we have PDCs in the Miisi Gali, some communities along the Binaan and the Miisi rivers going through Daraga municipality to be affected.
Okay. And Mariton, what are some of the factors naman that you will consider to lower the alert level over Mayon?
Okay, so if we already see an end to the anomaly, for example, if we see a prolonged decrease until cessation of certain activity, like the cessation of rockfall or pyroclastic density currents, and then we have a return to the baseline or the background level of ground deformation. And we observe this for a period of time, like for a month, then we can bring the alert level down.
Now, if we can move to the two other volcanoes, can we have an update on Canlaon in Negros?
You mean we are actually monitoring, we have actually 4 volcanoes at alert. Canlaon volcano in Negros Island Beach has experienced degassing, ash emission this morning for nearly 3 hours, more than 3 hours. And ash is blown to the southwest again, as usual. Canlaon has been at alert level 2 since July last year, coming down from alert level 3. We are not changing the alert level at all in Canlaon, even though we have the short-term decreases in sulfur dioxide emission because the long-term trends of particularly the volcanic earthquake activity, ground deformation, and sulfur dioxide emission indicate that the volcano is preparing for a major eruption, and it is to be expected that we will have this short-term decreases in activity, but the long-term, it's still at unrest, and we are still anticipating that there will be a major eruption for Canlaon. So let us not, as we have communicated time and again to our local government units and our DRR comrades in Negros Island region, has not
to let our guard down.
Right. When we see this short-term decreases in monitoring parameters. For Bulusan volcano, it has been in a bit of quiescence. And at Taal, we've had some minor phreatomagmatic eruptions in the past month. So we are still both at alert level 1 in Taal and in Bulusan volcano.
All right, all the volcanoes, we got an update. Thank you so much, Mariton Bornas, Chief of Volcano Monitoring and Eruption Prediction Division of HEVOLCS.
Now in other news, Malacanang has expressed reservations over a Senate proposal to cut the value-added tax from 12 to 10%. The palace said the proposal needs stronger justification before gaining support. Executive Secretary Ralph Recto said the government's debt position must be a key consideration in any move to lower taxes. This comes after Senator Erwin Tulfo proposed to bring the VAT back to 10% to help ease inflation. Tulfo filed Senate Bill 1552, citing that the Philippines imposes one of the highest VAT rates in Southeast Asia, along with Indonesia. Recto, however, warned that the country is already borrowing heavily, even with the current VAT rate in place.
Considering that we're still borrowing 1.6 trillion, that should be a factor in determining whether we should reduce it or not.
Recto was once the finance secretary and before that, a senator who pushed for several tax laws, including the measure that raised the VAT to 12%. He has previously warned that cutting the VAT could strain government finances and risk a credit ratings downgrade. For his part, Finance Secretary Frederick Go said he has discussed the proposal with Senator Tulfo, but stressed that any VAT cut should come with a review of existing exemptions.
It should be coupled with removal of VAT exemptions. Kasi one of the reasons why we have a low VAT efficiency is because there are so many exemptions in our country for VAT. So you want to lower the VAT rate? Pwede naman, but you have to remove all the VAT exemptions. Also, if that means reduced revenue for the country, we should also correspondingly reduce the expenses or the
And we are pausing for another breather, but right after that, Davao Congressman Pulong Duterte gives an update on how his father is doing while still detained in the Netherlands and awaiting pre-trial. The details when the big story returns. Stay tuned.
The big story is back with another challenge to the detention of former President Rodrigo Duterte in The Hague. His son, Davao City Representative Paulo Duterte, has filed a memorandum before the Supreme Court questioning the arrest and the ICC taking custody of Digong. The younger Duterte reiterated that his father's arrest was unconstitutional and illegal. Pulong believes the case is not yet moot since the High Tribunal still has the authority to review the capture. The memorandum also argued that the ICC no longer has jurisdiction following the withdrawal of the Philippines from the Rome Statute. Congressman Duterte stated that the SC has the power to nullify any cooperation with the ICC and Interpol and issue remedies such as habeas corpus. Prior to the memorandum's filing, Pulong visited his father at The Hague. The former president is now sporting long hair because he can't get a haircut inside the ICC detention facility. Digong's family was also not permitted to visit him during the Christmas and New Year holidays. Congressman Duterte likewise addressed the possibility of another impeachment complaint against his sister, Vice President Sara Duterte. In July last year, the Supreme Court declared the first ouster case against the VP unconstitutional because of procedural errors and violation of the one-year bar rule. This February, that rule is lapsing.
Kung na sila ay attack buhaton sa mo, di andam lang. Tangkidigira ilaha, amo pader, ana langgod. Mubalira man ning kalibutan karon pila ka adlaw.
And we now turn to today's key economic stories, starting with headline inflation quickening to 1.8% in December 2025. The figure is up from 1.5% in November. Nevertheless, inflation remained within the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas' forecast range of 1.2 to 2% for the month. The figure also brought the full year 2025 inflation to 1.7%. That's well below the 3.2% in 2024 and the central bank's 2 to 4% target band for the year. The Philippine Statistics Authority said the increase was driven mainly by food and non-alcoholic beverages, which accounted for nearly 100% of the upward pressure on prices. Meanwhile, the government has lowered its economic growth targets for this year and in 2027, as the impact of the flood control corruption scandal is expected to linger into the first half. The Development Budget Coordination Committee cut its growth targets to 5 to 6% for 2026 and 5.5 to 6.5% for 2027. These are below the previous 6 to 7% goal set for 2026 through 2028. The target, meanwhile, was retained for 2028, the last year of the Marcos presidency. Economic growth slowed to an over 4-year low of 4% in the third quarter due to weaker government spending and softer confidence amid the corruption scandal. Economy Secretary Arsenio Balisacan said growth may remain subdued in the first half of 2026, but is expected to pick up later as governance reforms take effect. The downgraded outlook also mirrors recent cuts to growth forecasts by the International Monetary Fund, World Bank, and Asian Development Bank. And the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas says another rate cut could come as early as its first policy meeting in 2026. BSP Governor Eli Remolona said a February cut is on the table, though unlikely. He cited December inflation as reasonably low and economic growth expected to miss targets. The Monetary Board ended 2025 with a fifth straight 25 basis point cut, bringing the key policy rate to its lowest in over 3 years at 4.5%. It has so far delivered a total of 200 basis points in cuts since it began the easing cycle in August 2024. Remolona said any further easing will be data dependent, adding that more than one additional cut would only be considered if growth falls below 5%.
And before we say goodbye, preparations are in full swing ahead of the Feast of the Black Nazarene on Friday, January 9. Our big picture tonight is the new Andas, now at the Quirino Grandstand for the Traslacion. In a video shot by our kapatid Mon Gualvez, the carriage is seen with several new features, including improved ventilation designed to prevent moisture buildup on the glass enclosure. It is also now equipped with a steering mechanism for better control and 4 front wheels to provide for a more stable and durable ride. There are designated positions inside for operators along with added safety features. Church officials are once again reminding devotees not to climb up on the andas to help ensure a smooth and safe procession.
All right, and that's it for the big story this Tuesday. Thanks so much for watching.
We are back here tomorrow at 8 o'clock p.m. and we will see you then.
Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time. Have a good night.